I'm sure none of you have been asleep. There's the excitement going on of the election. But on a more serious note, of course, the results of the election will have an impact on health policy. We don't know what it will be at the moment, but clearly a period of uncertainty is probably not good for us or the NHS as a whole. So the sooner things get sorted out one way or the other, the better. Right, welcome and apologies. I have apologies from the non-execs from Richard Noble. Are there any other absentees? No, thank you very much. Any new declarations of interest to be made? Thank you very much. So the minutes of the previous public meeting, which is on the 21st of April. Let's quickly go through those. And if anyone has any comments, please shout out. So page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, and 7. Thank you, everybody. The action log from the previous meeting. So the first item was about preparing a report on complaints, and that's coming up later on. And the second item was the presentation from Health Watch, and we'll get a sort of follow-up to that in our meeting in November. So my verbal update. We ended the year, as I'm sure many of you will know, we ended the year as one of the best performing trusts in the country in terms of our performance at A&E, where we met the 95% standard, one of the only trusts in the country to do that. And I'd like to pay tribute on behalf of the board to our entire team on the clinical side for pulling together sometimes through some very difficult periods in helping us achieve that. It's not a solo effort. It's everything from the front door all the way through the hospital to the back door. And I really do think that the achievement which we made, which has been interestingly recognised both by our regulator and indeed by the Secretary of State, is something to be very proud of. So many congratulations on that. We also hit our financial target. In fact, we beat our financial target in that the budget that we forecast was improved. So that also, I think, in the current NHS environment, the current health environment, is a very, very significant achievement. And once again, I'd like to pay tribute to the team who managed to do that. So, as you can imagine, having achieved both the major clinical target and the financial target, we started a new financial year, which we started at the beginning of April, with a degree of confidence and looking as strong as we've been for some time. Other than that, I would just like to update on, we had a very successful Nurses' Day celebration a few weeks ago, which Charlotte was very involved in, and we had, it must have been 80 nurses, 80, maybe 100, I don't know. It was a huge number of nurses in the room. We gave the normal presentations. We did a Zumba class, or some of us tried to do a Zumba class, and we had a very inspiring speech from the chief nurse for London.
Yes.
That's it, Oliver Shanley. It was very, very interesting. And so that was a really nice occasion. There was also a bake-off competition, wasn't there? Which we managed to sample quite a few of the cakes. So it was a very, very nice day to celebrate our nurses and everything that they do for us. And it's very important, I think, for us to continue to do events like that. So we will no doubt do that again next year. Other than that, I suppose, as I was saying earlier on, the election has thrown up an interesting situation with challenges for us and all NHS trusts. We obviously at the moment don't know quite who's going to form the government, and we certainly don't know who's going to be the new Secretary of State. We do know, I believe, from reading Health Service Journal updates, that two of the junior health ministers are no longer MPs, so they won't be health ministers. So there's definitely going to be some changes, but what they are, we just don't know at the moment. So that's all from me at the moment. I'd like Daniel to update from his team. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. So my report is made up of the weekly messages that I write to all staff. And you never would have believed, would you, that you'd start the weekly message by talking about a horrific terrorist incident and then discover that it's out of date because there was one that happened just directly after the board papers were published. So I think everyone in the NHS has pulled together amazingly to respond to some absolutely horrific situations, and I think it's had quite an impact on people in the country and in our hospitals. So whilst we didn't directly take any patients, we were alert and available to support the trauma centres in London, certainly for from just a few days ago. And then you get onto the complete contrast of the really amazingly positive things that have been happening in the hospital. So Lawrence has already alluded to getting a letter from Jeremy Hunt and then a visit from him to congratulate us on the A&E delivery. And then you go back to some difficult things. So the cyber attack on the NHS, that affected all organisations. I was able to report in the weekly message how well Peter and the IT team had responded, and we didn't have any clinical issues as a result of it. And by Monday morning, we had put in place all the patches on all the different bits of IT that we have, and we're able to carry on a normal service. So well done, everyone in IT, for making that happen. We've had the results of the inpatient survey for the year, and our position hasn't really moved, so we haven't got worse, but we haven't got better. We're in the pack. It's very clear the things that we need to do to get a better patient survey, and a good part of it is we've got to get more regular real-time feedback from patients, and so Lisa, who for those of you who don't know, our comms director, is going to be actively working out how we can get better feedback and respond to it more quickly. And then there's two wonderful bits of paper that I've signed in the last month. So one is with Trevor, which is the contract for the repair of B and C blocks at St Helier with a company called Breathe. So the scaffolding goes up in how many weeks?
2 weeks.
2 weeks to begin a year and a half's worth of work to replace the roof, the windows and the walls of 2/3 of the building.
And more important, some structural repair work required.
And we're already beginning to understand the consequences of it, as we've had to take out rather a lot of car parking spaces to make way for the compound. And we're beginning to experience what the noise is going to be like. But anyhow, that's a very positive thing to be getting on with. And then we've also signed the contract with Astral to replace 25 pieces of radiology kit in the next 3 years. That has already had the impact of us attracting lots of radiographers to come on board to work for us, because all the kit going digital and it all being new is a good enticement for staff. And then on the subject of really amazing staff, I went to the hospital at night team and watched what they did when they run the hospital when we're all asleep. Quite an incredible group of people, an amazing set of backgrounds. So I think I sat in a room of 25 people, of whom only one was born in Britain. And it was the most amazing team of diverse people, massively committed to Epsom and St Helier. Quite a remarkable thing. And then lastly, I think I'll just point out about changes to theatres. So this week, on Monday, we made the biggest change to how we provide surgery in the Trust for a very long time. So we have moved day surgery from St Helier to Epsom in totality. We have started 3 session days, and we've opened not only a new pre-assessment service, but a new clinical area where when you come in for surgery or you go to a dedicated area, you don't go up to a ward, and the dedicated area is right next to theatres, so that it's a much better patient experience. It required us to job plan or re-job plan every consultant surgeon anaesthetist in the trust, a huge staff consultation as well to make the changes work, and fingers crossed this week it's gone well, hasn't it?
Exceedingly well.
So that is a fantastic improvement to the amount of surgery that we'll be able to offer in the trust. There we go.
Thank you very much. And let's now move on to the performance report, the integrated performance report, and we are starting with SAFE.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I'm going to take us through domains 1.1 to 1.3. I think Charlotte will want to pick up 1.3 onwards, and then Pat will comment from the PSQ perspective. So key points to highlight. There's a huge amount of information here. I think it's important to note that when we look at our trust mortality, one of the measures which is now in the single oversight framework, which is the framework we're monitored against nationally, is looking for a differential between weekday and weekend mortality. And it's important to note that within this trust there is no differential between the two, and that's an important positive point for us as an organisation. You'll also see on the mortality page there are some new measures appearing. We're now presenting on a monthly basis the total number of patients who die within the organisation, month by month. And you'll also see below that we are now starting to include data on how many of those deaths are subject to a mortality review, which is a new measure which was introduced to be in place for all patients who die within NHS care from April onwards. So that's something which will progress and be strengthened as the year progresses. We continue to be challenged in the delivery of getting patients onto appropriate environments and stroke wards, and also challenged in terms of our assessment for dementia screening and also for venous thromboembolism. These are always reported in arrears and continue to be subject to much focus with recent discussions at the divisional performance meetings to try and actually drive through performance and aid compliance. Particularly the VTE, we are frustratingly close to delivery, and it is in our gift to actually turn this around. The final thing I wanted to pick up was on page 1.3, which is in terms of root cause analysis. Like many trusts, we have advocated and seen an increase in incident reporting over the last year to 18 months, but with that comes the challenge of actually completing investigation reports in a timely way, and we're particularly challenged in completing the level 3 or the lower level incidents in a timely way. We are therefore currently reviewing the way in which we undertake these root cause analysis with a view to moving towards a panel undertaking the investigation reports rather than being undertaken by individuals. So I'll hand over at this point to Charlotte.
Sorry, just a quick question, Ruth. On the previous page about the assessments, I mean, you noted that the VT assessment isn't quite a target tantalisingly close, but if you look at the graph, it shows a good trajectory. You made some good improvements last year, and then it's stayed stable, albeit just below the target. The risk assessments for dementia show quite a different pattern. They show basically both for risk assessment and screening, they show basically a constant decline over the year. Are there any learnings we can take from what we did with VTE in terms of assessments, in terms of training, awareness, recognition, or whatever, or are they very different in terms of their context?
So I think the learning is that this needs to be managed very tightly at ward level, and VTE incorporating whether an assessment has been undertaken or not into the whiteboards that the ward team huddle around has been quite critical in driving up performance. So we are in conversation with obviously the provider, what will be our electronic whiteboard, which I think is coming into play in September, because there are some key metrics which, if incorporated into the electronic whiteboard system, I think would make a fundamental difference to our performance. And both VTE compliance and dementia screening are two of those that we are very keen to be included in the informatics set that come as part of that whiteboard system.
But is there any difference in terms of the priorities these have in day-to-day?
Oh, absolutely. So I think clearly clinicians undertake VTE assessment at point of admission, and it has to be undertaken for all patients because clearly clinicians recognise that assessing someone's risk of venous thromboembolism is a kind of clinical risk issue, and so it's undertaken, I think, with more regularity than dementia screening is. It's important to note that the calibre of care we give to patients with dementia is strong. The difficulty with dementia screening is it's not always clear which patients need to have a dementia screen undertaken. It's not a universal indicator, whereas VTE assessment is, and I think in part that does make it more challenging. But nevertheless, the whiteboard system presents the opportunity to ensure that appropriate assessments are undertaken.
Perhaps I can just make a couple of additional comments as well. That towards the middle of the last financial year, we clearly identified that the dementia screening as well as the VTE screening were going off track. There were significant capacity issues for particularly the medical teams, and we focused from a safety perspective to concentrate on targeting the VTE screening, whilst acknowledging that we need to enhance our care for dementia screening. What we see on this measure for dementia is about the electronic documentation as to whether a screen has occurred. But what is much more important to recognise for dementia care is that it's a multidisciplinary approach, and to make sure that we get suitable care planning between the medical and the nursing teams about appropriate care on the wards, and that is what we've concentrated on predominantly for dementia care.
And we discussed this in PSQ and agreed that that approach was a proportionate one and a sensible use of resources and balancing safety against patient experience.
Okay, so I'll pick up now from Ruth. From the safety thermometer and the falls at the end of 1.3, you'll see that we remain favourable. Our falls rate is lower than the national average, which we're pleased about, and our harm-free care is high, which is excellent. Moving on to safe staffing, we now use safe staffing compliance. We use a system, which is an electronic system, which means our staff move around more than they probably did before. It gives us a very visual view of where the problems lie in the numbers of staff on duty. I'm pleased to say that we've maintained new staff coming into post, and I just saw the May figures yesterday, and we're in a positive balance again. And you'll see from the Chief Executive's report, our first 3 nurses from India arrived last month, and we have 4 more, 2 from the Philippines, 2 from India, arriving next month. And they're going to crucial areas like some medical wards, but also intensive care, which is excellent. From an infection control perspective, we had 1 MRSA bacteremia, sadly, in April, and that was due to a gentleman that came in with a very sore heel, but this has been attributed to us because we picked it up later. Our C. diff rate remains on trajectory. We did have, I'll talk about hand hygiene first. We've had our hand hygiene improves, although last month we had a blip with surgery because the head of nursing from surgery went away. And his staff let him down, and that won't be happening again. And they're now, we've got 100% compliance for May. But what we're now focusing on is how people wash their hands. This may sound simple, I know, but we had to get people to audit their hand hygiene to start with. So we're doing that, and now we're focusing on technique. And so you'll see some fancy on loan pop-up sinks arrive where you can put your hands up against the screen and it will tell you whether you've washed your hands properly. I'm happy to bring them here.
Please, I think that could be fascinating.
I'd like to box.
Yes, do bring them.
We did have an outbreak on Buckley Ward at Epsom of norovirus, which we managed. We had to close the ward, but that burnt itself out quite quickly with good control. Moving on to maternity care. Is it reverberated? Is that better? where to speak. Yeah, okay.
Not the IT director, but not
Very tricky, he's prodding me.
Turn it off, turn it on.
So in maternity care, our postpartum hemorrhage rate, we are focusing, I'm destined not to speak at this meeting, we're focusing a renewed focus on postpartum hemorrhage, and we do accept that there's a lot of juniors that go through there. Generally, we're finding that instrumental deliveries has increased the number of PPHs, but we've got very good consultant presence and a PPH champion on the labour ward now. And I think that's all I wanted to say about maternity, unless there are any questions, so I'd hand over to Lisa.
Charlotte, before we move on, can I just ask you about going back to falls?
Yes.
One of the things I know that NHS at the top are getting interested in is unobserved falls, as opposed to falls which are observed. And I just wonder if you could say something about, given our layout, given we're so old, I should imagine that it's quite easy for us to have unobserved falls. So can you just reassure us that there are processes in place to make sure that we discover any unobserved falls?
Absolutely. So we do struggle, and in fact, over 80% of our falls are unwitnessed. They're not seen. So what we've implemented is tag nursing and cohort nursing, and what that means is patients who fall, we tend to put them in the same bay together and keep somebody in there at all times. You'll notice from our, if you look at the number of one-to-one nurses that we use, I think we have a higher number of special nurses used to sit with our patients to make sure that they don't fall because of the layout. However, Rakesh and I have talked about this, and we've actually got a new project that we're just scoping out to see if we can change how we manage the specials workforce. The point is, people have to be in the bay, which is why we pushed tag nursing. It's very difficult to do it at night because we have less staff on duty at night. It's much, much easier in the day because of the visions of the ward as well.
Charlotte, you mentioned postpartum hemorrhages, and you talked here about some of the processes that we've got in place in order to prevent them. But I am right, aren't I, that when a severe PPH occurs, we also have follow-up and counselling and support for the woman in those circumstances.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah. And any severe perineal trauma, for instance, they come back to a clinic and they see some of our midwife consultants.
Well, in fact, I cover Lisa's period as well. So
Okay, so, all right, please.
Thank you. In terms of 2.2 caring and responsive on the patient experience, you'll see from the report that the actual numbers of friends and family tests, people that are responding to the family, friends and tests, has dropped slightly. This has been due to, when you actually analyse it, the numbers of paper copies being available for people to fill in. So there's a piece of work to help raise awareness and offer people the opportunity not just to do it via texting or via phone, but also to put back in place the more old-fashioned, if you like, version of being able to fill in a piece of paper. So we're quite confident that we'll start to see those figures improve. You'll note also from the report what we'd like to do next time is bring some information to the board on our PALS service, because they take a huge amount of queries and concerns from relatives and patients, so it'd be important for the board to understand some of the key themes that are coming out from those contact calls that we have on a daily basis. In terms of complaints, very disappointing to see the response time scale at 30.6%. What we are doing is we are re-looking at the complaints process. It is kind of a bit complicated at the moment, so we need to make sure we scale back and enable us to be able to respond in a timely fashion to all of our people writing in or raising formal complaints with us. Also, what we want to be doing going forward is bringing to the board some of the key themes that are coming out of the complaints, so we can monitor how we are progressing in terms of some of the action we're taking. Are the actions we're taking making a difference to the complainants? And just for the board's note, if you look roughly around 600 complaints we've got, around half of them are specifically focused on clinical care and treatment. So a huge number of them, over half of them are requesting information about their clinical care and treatment that they didn't understand. And the next biggest item won't come as a surprise, over 102 site communication issues or communication things they don't understand. So there's a big piece of work that we can do on communication, but as I say, I'll be bringing that back to the board along with the actions that we're taking, so the board can actually track what we're doing and if it's having a positive impact on what people are saying about our services.
So PSQ has held 2 meetings since the last board meeting in April and in May, and looked at the reports that you've just heard summarised from colleagues. And we particularly focused on both the infection control on a continuing basis, as we have been. Glad to see that is improving. We will continue to maintain our interest in that, because it's so fundamental to the care of patients, and we're coming from a place we were not happy at all. Equally, we look each time in our meetings at serious incidents, and out of those, sometimes we take a theme and ask for a report on that. So at the April meeting, from a previous serious incident, we asked for an update on caesarean sections, so we get a verbal report from Charlotte about that, and we will be having one on PPH in the future, and indeed a verbal report from the team, the maternity team, on the serious incidents that we've had in the past few months. We also have looked at the CQC action plan. Some of you will remember that we had the CQC some time ago now, but we are still making sure that there's a follow-up on all the action plan actions, and there is now a tracker just for a few residual elements, one of which is complaints, which we are concerned about, because complaints is a very important feedback loop that the committee is interested in seeing that we make best use of, as well as addressing the specific complaint that an individual patient or carer makes. So that's another thing that we are focusing on, will do for the next several meetings. And the last thing I'd like to mention is the learning from deaths, which is, there is a big push on this centrally, nationally, and it is again another way of learning about ways in which we can improve the care of patients. And I think the committee was very happy to hear at its May meeting about the structures that have been set up to ensure that we are really, I think, a little bit ahead of the curve, possibly, on having a way of looking at all deaths in the hospitals. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Now it's caring. No, we don't care. I get so confused. It's Caroline. Caroline, over to you.
So we continue to deliver across all the performance standards, apart from the referral to treatment, where we are still challenged, but we are within a hair's breadth of delivery, and we are carrying on the work we are doing to look pathway by pathway across our surgical specialties in order that we can deliver sustainable change, so that we can deliver robustly going forward. We remain challenged around ambulance handover weights, but are not an outlier in the system, and commenced a piece of work on the 1st of June, which is due to conclude at the end of July, which we will believe will make a significant difference to our offload times.
Can you just go into that a little bit more indeed? I mean, what was it that prompted that piece of work?
So I think we've been talking throughout the winter about the fact that we remain challenged, particularly at the St Helier site, in the time that we take to offload our patients from ambulances onto trolleys in our emergency departments. Some of that is to do with some of the way the department is laid out and how we triage patients as they come through. Some of it is to do with the manner of the pre-alerts. Some of it is to do with how we interact with the ambulance service around when patients are coming in. So our emergency care lead nurse, Craig, is leading across both sites on a work stream we have in place in order to be able to address the challenges in the system that are leading to the delays. I'm confident that that work stream will reduce in greater operational efficiency around the offload delays. But it requires work between us and the ambulance service, but it also requires some internal change in some of our patient flows.
Thank you. Ian, do you want to add anything? You're down here.
Yeah, I'm just going to ask a question, I suppose, on the positive thing. Last minute cancelled operations. In March, we got a radically better result this year than last year. So what made the difference, and how are you embedding that to ensure that that's sustained?
So, as Daniel has alluded to, we have been working for the past 6 months on a significant change to how we operationally deliver our elective services. Part of that work stream has been an escalation process around cancellations. So that started actually in February. It's taken a bit of time to kick in, but hopefully we're starting to reap the rewards of that. So I hope to continue to see that improved performance.
Thank you.
Kevin, people.
Okay, in terms of the well-led workforce, vacancy there you can see has risen significantly, but that's about how we've set the establishments at the start of the financial year, and this has been looked at, and there's a validation issue there that the 300 is actually 175, but we're also working in the finance committee, discussed this about how that fits with how we deliver the reduction through the year, because it's then about delivering the savings against that figure. So the key thing to look at this stage of the year would be the second graph, where you can see that our clinical workforce is being maintained, and that's really where we've had a big focus for a couple of years now, and Charlotte referred to the recovery in the nursing net change as well, where we've seen a net gain in May, both in registered nurses and in healthcare assistants. And we continue to focus on the recruitment, particularly in the clinical areas, but we're also doing some work at the moment with one of Caroline's general managers around supporting the admin staff recruitment in the booking centre, which is more of a local campaign than some of the things that you hear about on the clinical side. And we're also having a big push on doctors, which is a big focus for us at the moment. Other areas to flag, more positive news on sickness absence, which is down at 3.6%. That's the lowest we've achieved for a long time, so that's positive, but continuing to keep a focus on how sickness is managed. You'll know from previous conversations that we've got a lot happening around health and wellbeing, so we're looking at health and wellbeing as well as the management of absence. There is a slight increase in turnover. The departments that are listed there as high generally are small departments in the corporate areas. The main focus around turnover for us is still the nursing, to try and make sure we're reducing the nursing turnover and work on career development, and training is particularly something that Rachel Addy, our lead on that, is doing. The figures on appraisals have dropped out the sheet there, so just verbally update, which I think I mentioned last time, the end of April figure was 80% achievement on appraisals, which has been our focus over the last couple of months, and we're now following up with potentially improvement notice those managers that have not done their appraisals, which will start to kick in at the end of May.
Thank you. Before we go on to the comms bit of this, a couple of points from me. Well, firstly, Steve, did you want to come in as a hold med? Okay, from me. On staff turnover, can you talk a little bit about the move of staff to East Street and the impact that has had on staff turnover? Which I think is quite relevant.
Yeah, we discussed this at the People and Organisation Development Committee about my own department, I think, because I've got the highest, it's not the role model you'd expect from the HR director having the highest turnover in the trust. But one of the things we picked up at the People and OD Committee is that I've got quite a few more junior staff, that the move to East Street has meant some extra costs incurred for them. and we've had leavers, because of that. And we think it's been an issue for some other departments, but I do think it's a mixed picture. We've also got positive stories about people who is a better working environment. But I think for those lower paid, where they were perhaps walking to work because they live close to St Helier, then it has been a significant issue for them. And so I have had some people leave from my department on that. Some of them, and actually they still get shown, have actually taken jobs in the trust, but based at St Helier. That's been, at least we've retained them in the organisation. So we probably could have managed that better if we'd have looked and had more time to see whether we could have found them jobs in advance of them going. But I think we've managed to keep a few of them by them coming back to jobs at St Helier, but in different departments.
You should ask Rakesh, because he has the...
Yeah, I know. I was going to say, I know your staff are also at East Street.
Yes, so I've had the finance staff. I've had a positive experience actually. We've not lost any since we moved to East Street, and we have had a few who used to walk through St Helier. And actually, before we moved to East Street, we stopped our recruitment because we felt we'd get a better recruitment rate at East Street, and that has proven to be true. So we've recruited a number of people on the basis that we're at East Street and at the centre of Epsom. So that has been. So I think it is a mixed picture, really.
Charlotte.
Our nurses love it at East Street. Now you may wonder why nurses are going to East Street, but we are doing a lot of interviewing for nurses and midwives at the moment, and they are all commenting it's really good to go there because you can see the candidates come, they can get there very, very easily on train, and they're not interrupted because they've got discreet big rooms where they can do lots and lots of interview. So they're now thinking they'd like to have some meetings down there. So it's been quite positive in other areas of the trust.
Yeah, the recruitment team like that for that.
Yeah, it's good. And the only other thing, Kevin, I don't know whether it's worth summarising for the board. When we had the pod a couple of weeks ago, there was a very interesting presentation from Marion, the head of midwifery, about the new registration and qualifications for midwives. Maybe Charlotte ought to just summarise that so the board is aware.
The changes to supervision. So midwives have always had statutory supervision, where they had to undergo statutory supervision with a statutory supervisor of midwives. And following the Morecambe Bay, the Kirkup report, there was a view from the Morecambe Bay investigation that midwives should be managed the same way that other staff are managed through a formal management process, and they felt that at Morecambe Bay some of the midwives had been dealt with through supervision, that actually that was a management issue. So we've had changes in supervision nationally, and I think that's all we can say about it really.
Yeah, but I mean the situation is that the supervisory regime is changing.
Yeah, absolutely, yes. We will still have supervision,
yeah, but it's
in a different way.
I think the clarification that Charlotte mentioned there about the distinction between a supervisor and a manager is going to be quite beneficial, because historically we've had challenges with midwives and their appraisals, because they would say, well, I have supervision with my supervisor and therefore I don't need appraisal with my manager. Well, actually we say you did, and they sort of seen it as a duplication, but this will clarify and streamline that. It's quite helpful.
Yeah, I mean the important thing is that the changes are obviously understood by the midwife team and are be sort of viewed as a positive thing. Is that the case?
I think they do. There's been no issue about it not being positive now, because we've managed it probably ahead of other trusts how they've implemented it. We are still keeping a member of staff that can go around and scoop up some of the supervisory issues that would have come to light.
Thank you. Lisa, do you want to say a little bit about communications engagement?
Certainly. You'll see from the report we had a really good April in terms of positive news stories, one of which of course has been driven by the performance. That's really strong to show the link between good performance and actually positive coverage. It really does matter and make a big difference. One of the things I'd like to highlight on the report is the BME network that's been set up. This is a really positive step forward for the organisation. We were delighted from comms to be involved in it. And yesterday, Aruna and I and HR colleagues interviewed for the Quality Engagement Inclusion Lead for the Trust, and it was incredibly successful. We were staggered by and very impressed by the number of people that wanted to come and work at the organisation. It was really phenomenal, and we hope they've made a really great appointment to join the organisation. Going forward, we will add into the report something for internal communications, so the board get to have a view in terms of what we're doing, not just externally and measuring externally, but we'll have a look at how we can measure internally as well for the ongoing year.
Thank you. Any questions on comments? In which case, on to financial. Rakesh.
Thank you, Chairman. The report we have in front of us is for April. Just before I talk about April, just to inform the board and members of the public that our control total that we've agreed with our regulators, NHSI Improvement, is to post a deficit of £17.8 million. And so that's the target we'll be monitored against as the year goes on. So at the end of April, we were planning for a deficit of £4.2 million, and against that target, we were 200k ahead of the target. So a positive month in the first month, continuing the sort of performance we saw in last year. In order to hit our target, we have planned for a cost improvement and efficiency program of £15 million for the financial year. And you can see the trajectory of how we plan to achieve that. And in April, our plan was to achieve £500,000, and we were slightly behind that. And we're looking into reasons where that is and put mitigations in place. The other key metric we're looking at, and Daniel alluded to this, is our capital expenditure. So we have planned for a significant capital spend this financial year in the region of £42 million. That's compares to £13 million we spent last year. So we measure against that, and that's a slow burner. It will start slowly, then we'll ramp up, and we've talked about a £12 million contract that's been signed, and we'll monitor that as well. The last thing very important that we keep a very close eye on is our cash. So the cash balance at the end of April was £20 million, but £12 million of that is ring-fenced for the refurbishments of Block B and C, and that will draw down, and you can see the plan for that. And those are the key metrics for April.
Thank you. Richard isn't here as Chair of Finance, but I was at the last Finance meeting. All I would add is, firstly, yet again, repeated congratulations for hitting last year's target, which was challenging and achieved. I think that there's just very much a recognition that to hit this year's target will be challenging as ever, and particularly cost improvement, our SIPs, cost improvement targets are very stretching, as they are this year for all trusts, and it's going to be a stretch to hit them, and obviously we'll be monitoring that very carefully, but I think it's important for the board to be aware of the big challenge to hit those cost improvement targets this year, and I think that none of us should underestimate that task. Okay, moving on then to the risk register. Peter.
Thank you, Lawrence. So, as this feels like the start of the year, we've had a lot of work done on the risk register to ensure that we've got the right key components. So the new additions to this risk register include, in formatting terms, changing the end columns to not just focus on the end of year risk, but also where is the long-term goal for that particular risk. So going forward, we'll see an additional column at the end. So we've made a start, and the Board Assurance and Risk Committee had a first and second pass at that over the last meeting. The other element that you will see from this report is there are a number of the text in red is the material changes from previous times. So I'll just highlight one or two of those. So for example, we've talked about the significant infrastructure work that we are now undertaking, both in terms of there's an impact on the running of the hospital, but also there's a significant scale of work to be coordinated. So we've added that under the second risk around our capacity and capability to deliver all the things that we need to deliver this year. So we are using the risk register as the tool to help us manage our business rather than it just being some administrative repository. So the other areas that I wanted to highlight is in the estates and infrastructure element, where we are going to do further work to draw out more clearly some of the critical estates projects that at the moment are aggregated up into a single risk. So we'll see that in further iterations. The other area that we're reported on at Park around the fragile services that we talked about is, again, rather than having a catch-all for a number of services, is to kind of draw them out singly. So for example, we already have stroke and interventional radiology as sort of specific risks with their own identity in the risk register, to draw out those where we are particularly challenged, so that there's more visibility over the actions we need to take and are taking to ensure we are mitigating those risks appropriately. So in summary, this report is really a refresh of the risk register from going from the end of one financial year into the next, and the key component is that many of the risks remain, although some of the specific issues change over time. For example, as new equipment is purchased and installed, those risks clearly are removed from the risk register. So that's the overall sort of position, which is why there appears to be quite a lot of red this month, because we've worked really hard to kind of start the year afresh. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Peter. That's very clear. Any questions specifically on the register, the risk register?
No, I just wonder whether there are any further learnings from the IT incident that we had earlier, whether it's around our processes, our staff training, or anything like that, because I suspect these things may happen again in the future. So do we have any learnings to make us more robust?
So on our corporate risk register, we have a risk about our whole digital platform and how reliant we are on technology. Even though it's relatively old, running the hospital does rely on a whole heap of technology. So the age of our infrastructure, so whether that's the servers, the cabling, the networks, and indeed the user devices, so the number of old Windows XP machines that we still have, we're already on our risk register prior to the WannaCry malware attack that kind of was a global issue, not just an NHS UK issue. So what that has reinforced for us is that clearly our IT infrastructure is a risk. We already had a plan to make progress to upgrade the infrastructure. The bit that we clearly did, that Microsoft made available, were patches for XP machines, which we, as Daniel mentioned, we installed, whereas prior to that, Microsoft said these machines are no longer supported. So the element we are currently reviewing, so our plan for 17-18 already was to replace almost all of those remaining XP machines. What we are doing now is reviewing our capital plan, including how we spend the IT element to accelerate that, so that we replace all of them this year. We haven't made a firm decision on that yet, but that's our under review to see how quickly we can complete that work, and then that would remove that particular kind of infrastructure component of the risk. But overall, I think the decisions we've made over the last 2 years to invest more significantly in all of our sort of IT fleet, whether it's the things that people see on their desktops or stuff that sort of sits behind that in the infrastructure, like the networks, is more robust. So I think the key learning from me is that actually this the reason why we weren't infected, you could either put down to luck or good management or good practice. So at the end of it, this requires every user to be part of your frontline defence, because what it takes is one user to open a link that they shouldn't have, and then that has an impact on everyone. So we weren't infected. We basically turned off our external and our internal email over on that Friday night faster than many others did, to prevent the spread or the potential spread. So we've done some internal learning. We've contributed to national learning. The key one is we need to make a decision on how quickly we replace those machines. But in terms of we are up to date, and we'll manage that accordingly.
So this risk model assesses risk on a basis of likelihood or probability of an impact, and I wonder whether we're comfortable that the likelihood probability element is sufficient, or whether we believe it needs to be uprated in light of the recent experience.
So I think the way the risk is captured is about all of our IT infrastructure, not just our vulnerability to a malware attack. So one of the things that we have replaced that's very specific about that we were already doing is upgrading all of our firewalls. That was already in process and in procurement. So you're pretty much there already. So I think this is probably in the scale of things about the right level of risk. It's clearly significant. It's been a significant risk for some time. We are investing the most we can within the resources available to ensure that the IT to support the running of the hospital is in as best shape as it can be. But if we had more resources available, then we would accelerate some of those things further. But I think we are in a reasonable place.
Okay. Peter, there are also a number of associated board committee reports which are available to read, but I don't think we need to go through them in detail. So if everyone's happy on the patient safety, quality and performance report, we'll move on to the complaints update report. We've already started to summarise that, Lisa, but we have a document that we can look at.
Yes, Chairman. I've pulled together, because we get patient feedback in a number of different ways. As you all know, we get it through the Friends and Family Test, we get it through PALS, and we also get it through complaints. So the report in front of you gives you kind of a high level of what people are saying about the service. On page 2, you'll note that in 2016 and 17, we made a commitment to achieving improvements in response time for complainants. This was not met, and you've got the figures there, basically showing a slow decline in the numbers of actual complainants that were responded to within a agreed time frame, and that time frame is agreed with the complainant in the first instance. What you will see is, on average, the Trust receives roughly around 600 complaints per annum. This hasn't gone up or down. We see fluctuations in months, but overall, the picture has remained stable. We currently have 217 complaints which we consider to be open, and on page 3/4 you see a breakdown of those in terms of the numbers of days. So 31 are under 25 days, and you'll see 19 between 25 and 35, and 9 between 35 and 45. Now, all of those can be in line with what was agreed with the complainant, so they might not be out of kilter, but the ones that we are working very hard to resolve are the 95, which are over 45 days. Some of these can be very complicated in terms of multifaceted. It might be somebody having concerns or raising issues, not just with this organisation, and we try very hard to resolve it in one complaint letter as opposed to putting it out to the ambulance service or to another organisation. So that sometimes is a reason for a delay. And the most important thing to note is that the complainants are kept readily in contact with to ensure that they understand if there is a delay and what that delay is and why that delay is. So it's not that we're sitting them not responding, they do have a dedicated complaints person. We are starting to see some themes coming through, and they're not dissimilar. So you've got the assessment there on page 4, which looks at some of the themes that are coming through. But what I've tried to do on that is to show you some of the positives we get as well as some of the negatives, including the FFT. So you can see staff attitude is a massive positive, but we are still seeing some issues that people are saying that staff attitude is an issue. So we're looking at what we're going to be doing about that. Specifically in terms of complaints, we've put some recommendations together, and they are in 3 sections, so they're short-term, medium-term and longer-term throughout the year. The first element is based on looking at how we can address the backlog that we have in complaints, and that's around looking at the actual process itself. We made it complicated, which has resulted in the divisions almost inventing some processes because that's what they've been able to do, and they've not had the support probably to be able to manage the complaints. Because if you take medicine and surgery, they are the largest divisions. They have the largest number of complaints just by that. Women's and children's have when they have a complaint, they don't have many, but when they do, they are very complicated to respond to. So what we are doing is we are working with the divisions around how we handle complaints, and we are partnering the complaints team with the divisions, very similar to how HR work and how finance work, and we're getting alongside the divisions to see how we can help and support the divisions in terms of responding. Medium term, we are looking to use Perform and external benchmarking to set up how we do and test a new approach for managing complaints within the divisions, and actually get the buy-in of those staff, very importantly, who need to respond to the complaints. So helping them and working with them to design a process which works for everybody, the complainant, the complaints team and the divisions themselves. And what I'm looking for to bring back in Q4 for the board is to actually assess how well we're doing from a complainant's perspective. So we're not just measuring the numbers. This is about not measuring the experience, but it's the experience with the complaints process. So I'll be looking for the end of this year to be able to bring a report back on that, so that we can start to really measure how successful the complaint process has been in resolving an individual complainant's concerns. I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Yes, thank you very much. I mean, obviously, Lisa, you and everyone and the board are aware that we've decided to put a focus on the complaints process this year. It's one of our key objectives, and I'm very pleased that we're starting to do this. I think that it is really important for the organisation to be not just responsive to complaints, because we always are, but to have a process which is clear, workable, and everyone understands, so that everyone can basically follow through and be on top of any individual complaint from the moment it arrives to the moment it's finished. And we need to get that consistent right across the organisation. It has been, as you say, a little bit piecemeal. So I'm very pleased that this work is ongoing. Anyone else have any comments or questions for Daniel?
So I think Lisa could have said in addition that we met a very articulate complainant a couple of weeks ago who was very able to articulate how we had not managed the complaint process well, as also how we had actually responded to the issues in the complaint well. So Lisa has gone to film her, and we're going to have a video that we'll be able to use with staff to explain this is what happens when you don't get it right in answering a complaint, which I think will be very powerful indeed.
Thank you. Elizabeth?
Yes, Lisa, you've made some recommendations at the end of your paper. Are you asking us to approve those recommendations, or are these already recommendations which are going forward? Because they all seem very sensible, and there is an excellent Q1, Q2, 3 and Q4 plan as well to take this forward.
This is something that I took to CTM and got their approval, the executive approval, to actually carry those recommendations forward. So what I'm hoping to bring back because I know this is something that the board has committed to reviewing, that you'll be able to see action against those in those specific quarters, so you should be able to see some significant movement quarter by quarter.
Excellent. I hope that's what you were going to say, Lisa. Thank you.
And I think we'll have that at PSQ and the board at the end of the year.
Thank you. Let's face Lisa again. Fundraising, very interesting.
Yes. This report is brought here as an opportunity, really, for the board to see what's the art of possible. So this is, there is a fundraising opportunity. We do need to assure ourselves that we are operating to the highest standards. There have been many, many new standards brought in, new guidelines and some legal responsibilities that we are now having to make sure that we comply with. In addition to that, so it's not just let's tick boxes, it's saying, you know, actually let's have an aspiration for the organisation in terms of fundraising. And when we look at it in terms of other organisations and national feedback, if you like, in terms of what charities can do within the NHS environment, you are looking somewhere in the region of 1% of the trust's turnover if we had a high aspiration. So you are talking circa 4 million that potentially we could be raising for the organisation to support staff and patient care, which is not normally or would be funded via the normal NHS route. So this is over and above NHS. This is not to replace NHS. I think that's quite important. So we've put together a bit of a paper and an overview with the view to asking the board particularly if the board's minded that we could produce and develop a fundraising strategy and business and operational plan to bring back for approval based on the if you like, the opportunity to both work with our partners, because we've got some fantastic partners that we work with, and they're listed there on page 3 and 4 already. It's not to replace those, it's actually to enhance those, to continue to build those relationships and maintain them, but also to look at what else is out there in terms of an opportunity for the organisation. Happy to take any comment.
Yes, thank you, Lisa. I think it's a really great initiative. The target you sort of broadly set is at 1%, which turns out about 4 million. Do you know what some of the other local trusts do in this area, and what sort of percentages of their turnover they manage to raise charitably?
It is around the 1% if you look across the board. Some are more successful than others. If you've got a single specialty hospital, so a children's hospital or a women's and children's hospital, you do tend to see higher than the 1%. They're usually very successful at that. And those that are more successful than others actually have a strategy behind it. They've invested in it. They do it very, very professionally. They take a lot of time and care in terms of what projects and programmes they choose to invest their time in. And they work with the local population very strongly in terms of helping to design that. So it's those where you're most successful, the ones that are most successful are those that have invested it in as a professional opportunity.
Me and Lisa have talked about an opportunity here to link this also with the health and wellbeing work. There's a few of us that go and run the non-such park run on a Saturday, but if you start fundraising through those types of initiatives, you often see Great Ormond Street or the Marsden, people you can run for, but actually this could convert, it's like a double benefit, the health and wellbeing of the staff, the contribution to the trust, is a double hit, so that's another opportunity that we're pursuing in this.
Good, and so I think you're asking. Sorry, Ian, did you?
No, I wonder if I could just ask a question. You've talked about ensuring that the funding is not used for core NHS activity, and then we have a link to corporate objectives, which to me screams out core NHS activity if it's a corporate objective for the trust. How do you ensure a separation there, just to make sure there's not mission creep from charitable funds coming in to subsidise core NHS activity?
So let me give you an example here. So the Caroline and team have just been through the process of what is the equipment that each of the clinical divisions would like to buy this year. And the list is millions of pounds more than we have money for. So we prioritise internally the things that are most important, but there's a lovely wish list. And if we were able to use our fundraising strategic initiative to help deliver the things on the wish list, then we will have managed to get the bits of kit that are actually going to meet our needs, as well as very helpful to patients and fits in with the corporate objectives. This would be an example of how you link the two things together. But we currently have too many examples of individuals going to individual charities saying, I would like this, and you think that's very nice, but that isn't what we would have chosen as an organisation as an important thing to invest in. And we have to get a much better discipline, but we need to do it in a structure of how we want to raise, with our communities, as much money as possible.
I certainly welcome this, and I think it is absolutely key that we do it in a professional way and that we do it in a planned way, because that's the only route to achieve sensible outcomes and be able to defend them.
And do we have a rough timescale of when we might get the strategy coming back to the board and for implementation?
Certainly, I'm hoping should the board approve this style and approach, we'd be able to bring for the next public board a strategy for you to review and a business plan for you to review.
Is that?
I just wanted to say I think I'm incredibly supportive of this initiative, Lisa, and one of the things that I think is very important to the success of this is that we do know that you've had quite a bit of experience in the past with this kind of work as well, so we're very lucky to have you, because this, as Pat says, this absolutely has to be done in a strong, professional, well thought through way. And what you've talked about here is certainly the beginnings of that process. I agree with everybody that the concept of additionality is absolutely core to everything that any charitable funds will be spent on.
Thank you. So I think you can take that we've approved the plan to develop the strategy, and obviously we'll look forward to the strategy when it arrives, hopefully next time. Thank you very much. So we now move on to the Audit Committee Summary Report, and I think that's you, Elizabeth.
Right. Thank you, Lawrence. It's been, this time of year is a very busy time for Audit Committee. Just to remind colleagues, it's an unusual committee because we do have representation on it of our external auditors, our internal auditors, and our colleagues from our counter-fraud investigation people. We take an overview of a number of the things which have already been discussed by the individual committees, and we make frequent referrals to those committees to ask them to carry out further work. We're looking at the reports of two meetings here, one on the 24th of April and one on the 30th of May. And you'll see on the 24th of April that we spent a considerable amount of our time discussing what is called the analytic review of the year. And I fully appreciate that not everybody gets the same buzz and rush of adrenaline when presented with a set of draft accounts that Rakesh and I do. But the analytic review is a very, very important piece of work, because it is the piece of work that Rakesh's team deliver when they go line by line through everything which is in the financial statements, and they say, what is this number this year? What was it last year? Why? What is the difference, and where does that difference come from? And what we are actually doing with that is saying, does that narrative agree with the incremental narrative that we hear month by month from the management accounts? And it's a very, very critical piece of work which was done on the 24th of April. The 30th of May meeting focused almost exclusively on the finalising the annual report and financial statements. We spent a significant amount of time doing what I think you would call intensive interrogation of the external auditors to make sure that as a committee we were satisfied with the work that they had done. And I'm very pleased to report that we do have an unqualified audit opinion on our final figures. The other document which we received, which is important, was the audit finding report. And I'm very happy to take any questions or even refer them to Rakesh.
Thank you, Elizabeth. What I'm taking from this report is that the audit committee has either reasonable assurance or significant assurance that all the things that an audit committee looks at are okay and appropriate. I mean, is that the right conclusion to draw, or are there any specific issues you want to draw to our attention?
I think we have significant assurance actually from the work which the audit committee carries out, and I think it's worth just talking about this word of assurance, which is used in a very technical way. Assurance requires evidence in order to support it. It is not reassurance in very nice warm words. There is evidence behind the work which is presented to this committee.
Thank you. Rakesh, do you want to add anything?
No, I think that's
Okay, good. Anyone else?
I suppose the only point I'd like to make is that this is an important strand to the actual annual report, the annual accounts, the annual governance statement, the quality accounts, all of those things that we will be making public ahead of the annual public meeting, which will be in early July. So it's a key building block to get us to that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, can I say a well done to our audit committee and to our finance team for getting the significant positive assurance on so many key matters. That's really good. Thank you. We'll move on to the SIR Supervisor annual report. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence. So this report really summarises all the work that has been undertaken over the previous 12 months in relation to information, and particularly in my role as the Senior Information Risk Officer for the Trust. So there's a lot of information in here. I'm just going to highlight just 4 points. So the first one is, as I hinted at, a conversation about this relies on individuals to play their part. So an important plank of that is making sure all our staff have their refresher training. So this, in 16-17, we delivered 95% of our staff having done that refresher training, including face-to-face work. And the face-to-face work has enabled us to make a greater emphasis on the need for individuals to basically, be smart about, your emails or personal information, or indeed your patient confidential information. So that's the first element I wanted to highlight. The second element is the number of incidents that we have to report externally to the Information Commissioner. So in the last year there was one of those, and in the previous year there had been 3, and the Information Commissioner was satisfied with our investigation and the follow-up actions that we had put in place, so they've not taken any further enforcement action in relation to that. The third element is around freedom of information. So we've seen an increase this year and in previous years on the number of FOI requests that we come through, and I'm pleased to report that we delivered sort of responses within the statutory requirements in 97% of those cases. The fourth element I just want to touch on is really, so what are we doing next year? Not really touched on in the report. I think there's just 2 things to highlight. So the work programme includes making the necessary preparations for something that is called the GDPR, which is the General Data Protection Regulations, which were in force in May 2018. So this is a year of making sure that we make the necessary changes in how we, largely for us, is making sure that we are more explicit in how we store information and how we communicate and obtain consent for storing and sharing of information. So it's that's a key plank. The other key plank of the work this year is that everything what I do works closely with the Caldecott Guardian, who's Dr. Martin Stockwell, who's responsible for ensuring that we are protecting patient information appropriately, or indeed sharing it appropriately. So our innovation for next year is that we'll do a joint report rather than it just being my report on all the work that we do together. So happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Peter. Just looking at the information governance training record, I'm very pleased to see that many departments did 100%, but I know the board directorate is the laggard, getting only 80%. So presumably someone around this table didn't do their training.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, whoever that person is, it's not me. Frankly, they should go and do their training immediately.
Yes.
Peter, sorry, Peter, I've got a question on the freedom of information request. Firstly, I noticed that we're getting over 2 a day now, which I guess are quite complex. Can we have some understanding as to the sources of these requests? I mean, clearly not identifying, but it would be interesting to know, what proportion come from companies, what proportion come from the media, what proportion come from individuals, and perhaps how that's changing over time.
Okay. So it's sometimes hard to determine who the requester is, so it's not quite possible to do that breakdown to the kind of precise degree, but I can give you sort of just now some headlines. So most of the requests actually come from, I think, would be companies interested in using this as a source for their future marketing or bidding work. So basically lots of questions, for example, quite recently about, what firewall provider do we have, when's this new for renewal, and all these things. So the questions are often from a supplier who wants to know when to put in their bids for further work. So I think a large chunk of requests are like that. There's another chunk which is perhaps either from either researchers or media or others who are interested in basically how well are we performing against either in more detail national standards, or to say, is there something about a particular procedure or something that they're very interested in, to say, how if they've gone to every trust to say, how are you doing against, for example, how many women have come forward with, we raise concerns about, for example, FGM. So there's quite a lot that are kind of basically more specific data than we routinely publish. And then there are others which are sort of more, just people just interested in something that's very personal to them, because either they're doing a university research project, or it's not just about their care, but it's something that they're concerned about. And I think those would be the broad themes. And one of the things that we are looking to do around some of those more routine questions is there's something called a publication scheme. So it's to put more data routinely in the public domain to then say, we publish that data so we don't have to kind of go into a specific trawl. But often the question is so specific that the general data isn't enough to answer their question. But one of the things around the GDPR is, I think we will see, not so about FOI, but more requests. And the biggest change in GDPR is from individuals who can ask for information about themselves. And in the past, we've been able to, for certain people we charge a fee for. In the future, that will not be the case. We'll be able to charge for all of the subject matter requests, which is related to FOI, because some FOIs are basically people just want information, and so they bombard us with requests, whether it's FOI or subject access requests or whatever else it might be.
Peter, can I just ask about information risks under 10? The second one of those, unauthorised access being gained to the medical records library, are those cases, or is the risk of someone who is not a proper person doing it, or somebody doing it for an improper reason?
So, in part, I think this is my recollection, is that its origins are quite old, and one of the things that we've put in place is even more robust swipe card access and other things. So partly it's about how you control the physical space is one component to that. The other component may well be someone has looked up. There's been one or two instances where someone has, a member of staff has looked up some specifics about a patient or that they may well know on that. So some of those, if we find those things, we follow up and treat those in according with the significance. If it's, sometimes that's just about an education point, and sometimes it's other steps need to be followed. So these are kind of big buckets that we've put in here, but sometimes there's a bit of specific. So or occasionally some of these are on the ward area. If there are paper notes, are those properly connected? So the things that someone might put a datix in to say there was an inappropriate access to medical records because maybe a patient or a carer was looking at the notes without sort of saying, "Can I look at the notes?"
And this was about the library, but it was the former case, right? I mean, I understand the point about seeing notes open in the ward.
So the library, I think
that might be somebody who was authorised, used their swipe card, but went in and looked at a file which they're not. There's no professional reason to do so.
Can I just ask about what seems to me to be a very large number of requests from solicitors, 1,210 subject information a year, so that's about 6 every working day. Are these related to potential cases, claims? I mean, it's a huge number. Or are they all... So if there were, let's say, one case, would this count each individual correspondence with the solicitor? So there may be loads of that. It's just a surprisingly large number. Has it increased?
So I don't think there's been a particular material change in the number of subject access requests from any source, but including solicitors. I think it's part of the normal. So lots of people may well, making initial inquiries that may well be done on a basis to work out is there a potential claim, and they don't necessarily all translate then into a subsequent sort of claim.
It's a big number. Does your annual report feed into our overall annual report as part of it?
So the annual governance statement makes reference to some of these elements, and in a way, because the annual governance statement covers so many things, part of, I suppose, really the assurance process is that we've done the necessary preparatory work, looked at the hard data to then be able to make the statements that are in the annual governance statement about how we protect people's information and do all the things that are in here. So for me, it's, as sort of many areas of the trust, it's important that we make sure that there is suitable visibility to provide that level of assurance, whether it's at the Patient Safety and Quality Committee and at the board, that we are both protecting people's information appropriately, and where there are breaches that we follow that through. So it's part of that suite of tools that we use to provide good governance. So that's really its purpose.
Thank you. Any further questions on Peter's report? Thank you, in which case we're going to James and the clinical assurance.
This paper has been presented to the Patient Safety and Quality Committee. A big organisation like this undertakes a large number of service changes each year. The Clinical Assurance Panel is an arm's length body which is a collection of clinicians, nurses and doctors whose job is to look at any potential saving scheme, sequin or major service change to assess the potential risks or impacts that the change might have on patient safety, quality or patient experience. And we look at every scheme, from mundane things like changing a supplier for paper towels or simple rebates that we might get on contracts, to very major service changes such as those that we're proposing in terms of what's just happened with the theatre changes or how we might manage the acute flow of hospitals. And it's important that the teams assess the potential risks and the impact on quality, and that they look at ways that the risks can be mitigated and tracked, and if necessary, where these risks materialise, that they are suitably escalated. Through the course of the year, we've looked at 285 schemes, over 31 meetings, and report regularly to Patient Safety and Quality Committee. The report highlights some of the work that we've done towards the end of last year, where the panel reviewed some of the schemes that were originally identified as potentially higher risk, and we have asked for additional assurance from the teams about how did they mitigate retrospectively, what materialised, and whether there is ongoing monitoring and mitigation. So this paper is here for the information of the board, as it's important that the board receive suitable assurance, and we also provide this externally to our commissioners.
Thank you very much, James. Very useful, very interesting. You have a table which essentially says, that there were 20 proposed and we did 18 of them. What happens to the ones that don't get through, as it were, or don't get through? What do they go back and get redone and then come back?
The panel supported by a very tenacious PMO administrator, so absolutely nothing can ultimately get lost in the system. So whilst we sometimes struggle to see every scheme prospectively, the nature of the way that a complex organisation like this works is that we can't develop all of our savings schemes before April of each financial year, and through the year events change and we develop new schemes. So there's an ongoing basis of review. The panel seek assurance, and then if we don't get enough assurance, we seek clarification, and a lot of the schemes require ongoing information, and that can be an ongoing challenge, but ultimately nothing slips through.
Good, thank you. I am very reassured.
I think you should be. I would like to take the opportunity to thank James and all those who sit on this particular group and the PMO behind it, because these are among the most interesting minutes I think that we get in terms of the oversight for PSQ, and there is a terrier-like quality to some of them, where you see things appearing that were not answered correctly, and someone is going back over and over again to nail the point. It is significant assurance, I think.
I think it's fair to say that the minutes are sometimes brutally honest.
Thank you very much. Good. So we're now going to move on to the CQAC, Clinical Quality and Assurance Report.
Okay, thank you. So CQAC is what might be known in another organisation as Clinical Governance Committee. In fact, that was its former title, but the change a couple of years ago reflects the broader quality umbrella that it now oversees. So indeed, the committee's purpose is to monitor and promote effective clinical risk management, patient clinical outcomes and patient experience to ensure both patient quality and safety, and to support the trust to achieve excellence in patient care. The committee meets monthly, and the business of the committee over the course of the last year is summarised here. The minutes regularly go through to PSQ, and I think provide again a detail of the conversations and discussions that I had at committee level. There is a list here of the subcommittees that report into CQAC, which I think is fairly self-explanatory, and the policies that have been approved. The committee also has a role to an extent in approving or agreeing a plan to take forward any new procedures that clinicians wish to undertake within the organisation, and has a wide-ranging set of discussion and conversation. I think that what you will see is that in addition to, for example, reviewing clinical incidents, patient safety incidents, complaints, and looking at the trends within divisions, There is also a wider-ranging aspect of other quality domains that perhaps don't get such focus at higher committee level, and I include in that the work of NCPOD, the national quality standards that we strive to adhere to, the work of clinical audit, the closure of NPSA alerts, and of course the ongoing monitoring of the CQC action plan. So there is a huge amount of discussion to have at committee level, which is summarised here. All divisions report on a quarterly basis. I've actually suggested that some representative divisional quality reports come to the next PSQ meeting, because they're exceptionally comprehensive reports that review trends against all the different quality domains by month and clarify the actions being taken both to track and institute changes at more local level. I think one thing to highlight is that the committee on 3 occasions in the last year was not able to meet because of operational pressures. And I think it does highlight that to date, those that attend the meeting are generally the same individuals that are actually managing sites at times of high operational demand. And that does pose a challenge for the committee. Moving forward, we've been discussing this. We now have in each clinical division a clinician, a consultant appointed to be the clinical quality lead for that division, and for the first time we have all 5 appointed. And I think what that will do is allow better consultant representation at the committee, because those clinicians are not involved in operational performance. They have the luxury of being able to focus purely on quality matters. And so I think moving forward, that will help drive attendance, particularly from our medicine and surgical colleagues. But otherwise, the report is here to note, and I'm very happy to take specific questions.
Thank you. Pat, do you want to comment on it?
No, we did look at this, and we actually did look explicitly at the attendance, because we were concerned to see that there was obviously a struggle to get people clinical to this. But Ruth has now responded to that, so I'm happy.
Thank you very much. Any other points on this? Thank you. So contracts over 50,000. You'll see there that quite a number refer to orthopaedic services, and that's part of the rationalisation of suppliers, which is a good thing.
Yes. So this report went to Finance Committee, and as the Chairman said, this is us rationalising our orthopaedic implants at Swelliok, and it follows a very long tender and procurement process.
Any comments on that? Thank you. The Trust Seal is coming out to essentially stamp its authority over all the contracts on BNC block. Is that right, Trevor?
That's correct, yeah. So there's architectural and design services, and then the actual main contract and innovation, buildings and design.
Thank you. We discussed that at Finance as well at quite some length in terms of the relationship between the various organisations involved. It's a very complicated project, and there are a number of organisations involved, and I can see Trevor is giving a wry smile, because I know that it's taken a long time to land it, and well done for getting it through. We're very pleased, because it's going to benefit our patients and our staff immensely over the next 18 months, well, after the next 18 months once the work is done. Thank you very much. Good. Does anyone have any other business? In which case, that's the end of the formal part of this meeting, and very happy to take questions from members of the public. If anyone has any? Thank you. Richard, would you like to reintroduce yourself to everybody so everybody knows who you are? I don't know.
I'm sure we can
hear you.
I'm sure we can hear you.
Okay, I'll use my theatrical voice. I'm Richard Bacon. I'm a councillor from Epsom and York. I was recently elected as the chair of the Health Liaison panel to take over from Liz Frost, who we're very honoured to have as our mayor for 2017 and 18. My question concerns the money that's been spent here in St Helier. I'm a little concerned because I don't hear any mention of Epsom. And as you know, we are a bit worried that we may be falling into some, I would say, neglect as such. But I'm just curious to know this £30 million, how much is that actually coming to Epsom?
So when you look at the quality of our estate, it is the St Helier site which is in a far worse condition than the Epsom site. And the backlog maintenance bill on this site for critical infrastructure is in the tens of millions of pounds. So it is only right and proper that the place that gets any investment we can make in making our buildings safer comes here first, because the risk is much greater. So we haven't neglected Epsom, but for the critical infrastructure, the need is better here. To give you an example of how we haven't neglected Epsom, we've just secured £1 million worth of investment to expand the A&E at Epsom. We're about to start recommissioning Langley Wing, which was where the mental health wards were, to turn it into wards that we can use for physical health patients. We are in the process of commissioning a 6th theatre for the orthopaedic centre, and you heard right at the beginning how we just built a new surgical admissions suite and pre-assessment suite at Epsom. So there is lots going on the Epsom side as well as here.
That's very reassuring. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Richard. Hello, yes.
I'm a resident from Epsom, and I used to be chair of the health liaison panel. I'm no longer a councillor, but I used to come to an awful lot of meetings, and so far we only seem to understand what the state is of the trust up until 2020, 3 years' time. What will happen beyond that time? Where will the trust sit? Or is that back to, we've only just had another election, please?
So if we hadn't just had another election, we have been given permission to, from the local NHS, the national NHS, and all our regulators, to begin a conversation with our communities on what is the plan going to be post-2020. I am hopeful that we'll be able to get permission from the new government that we will be able to begin that conversation, I'm hoping in July. Because we've got some very exciting plans that we think we'd like to discuss with the public about securing hundreds of millions of pounds worth of investment in our local NHS. But there's lots of different ways you could do it, and there's lots of things to talk about, and we're very keen to begin the conversation. So hopefully we'll be able to do that in July and come and talk to the scrutiny panel at Epsom and all about it.
Very good.
Thank you. Well, thank you all very much for coming. I do appreciate many of us have been up lots of nights, so maybe it's time to go home and have a snooze. But thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming. And we'll see you. Yes, we have our annual public meeting with our annual general meeting where we will be presenting the formal report and accounts for last year on the 14th of July. That will be once again here. So thank you very much.